Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Kyle. I run Spacing Magazine. If you don't know what Spacing Magazine is, here's a brief description. We come out 4 times a year. We're a magazine about Toronto and its public spaces and urban issues that surround the city. We've produced 34 issues to date, 33. We're working on our 34th right now. We started in 2003, and in 2011 we actually started publishing a national edition. So of the 4 issues that we put out a year, 2 of them are nationally focused and 2 of them are focused on Toronto. I'll get a little bit more about spacing as I kind of work through my talk here, but I kind of want to I feel like I need to justify why I'm actually here and why I'm talking about why I'm at a Creative Morning. And when I started to think about this, I actually realized that I've been very, very fortunate throughout most of my life to have been around people, surrounded by people who have encouraged me to explore my creativity. My parents were happy to let me draw and color for hours on end as a young kid. When I was 6 years old, my dad was pretty young. He had a massive heart attack, and I went to the hospital for, I guess it was about 3 months every day. And one of those things that like I got to do there, I was 6, I didn't know how serious this really was, right? So I drew all the time. And it was when my parents realized that I actually had some sort of artistic bone, and they actually started to encourage me to draw and illustrate. And when I was in grade 7, I had this amazing art teacher named Mr. Graham. He taught us how to do animation, and it was like the old style animation where you take a photograph and then you take another like you have a bunch of drawings, and it was and you splice it all together. And this was in grade 7, and he was an amazing support for me, and really encouraged me, and actually brought me back when I was in university to talk to his grade 7 classes for a week and help him teach. I also had friends that laughed at my comics, so those things were informative for me to start off with. And then I lucked into living in an area here in Toronto, in Willowdale. I was in the catchment area for Earl Haig Secondary School. Who's heard of Earl Haig here? Or? Oh, wow, good. Who went to Earl Haig that's in here? All right, one? Represent. Okay, so when I went to Haig, we're so lame, we called it Haig State when we were there. We had a theme song that sounded like it was, we're in a university. We really actually everyone that went there seemed to really quite like that school. And at the time, it had a few specialized programs. I had a gifted academics program, so for really smart people, a gifted athletes program, so Daniel Nestor went to my high school when I was there. We had a school for the arts that focused on music, dance, drama, and visual arts, and then we also had the local catchment of kids that lived in the area, and that's where I was. But luckily, I had this an arts background, and I soon found myself immersed in the arts there. And this kind of experiment of mixing super smart kids with artsy types and amped up athletes, you think would be like a recipe for like an after-school drama, but in fact, it actually really quite worked. So the person sitting next to me was on Degrassi, while someone else was training for the Olympics, and it was really neat to be able to turn on TV at night and see some of your friends, and then turn on the TV and watch the Olympics and see a 16-year-old gymnast that cheated off my notes because she was missing class all the time. So it was quite good that we got to appreciate what all of our friends that were surrounding us did, and seeing what they were excelling at. And it was kind of like fame in that kind of way. That's how I kind of describe it. If I'm really dating myself if I talk about fame, I think, here. And I show this version of the Degrassi photograph and not the current one where Snake is a teacher. So most of my time in high school, I was actually known for my comic strips. I put them in the student newspaper and in the yearbook, and I ended up actually being the yearbook editor. My main goal going through high school was to be the next Bill Watterson, the next like Calvin and Hobbes comic artist. But when you tell your parents that you want to be a professional cartoonist, they say like, but what school can you go to for that? And when there is no school for that, you kind of come up with a backup plan, and my backup plan was journalism school. And so luckily there seemed to be a good meshing of those kind of two worlds, where I could do political comics. I was quite political as a teenager. I was lucky I had some grandparents that were very politically active, and my parents as well. And so I went to journalism school. I went to Carleton, and then I went to Humber College. And I went to Carleton for a year, and I drank myself through that first year. And then I went to Humber College because I couldn't go back to Carleton University for the second year. But what I really quite liked about Humber was that it was very, very practical for me. There was a photography class, there was a layout and design class. And in my mind, I had it set out that I was going to be a Toronto Maple Leafs beat writer. I was going to be a hockey writer, and I was going to be a very good one. And then I got there, and there were 5 people in my class that wanted to do that as well. And then there was 5 people ahead of me and 5 people in a year ahead of them that wanted to do that as well. And then, the second year, there was 5 people behind me. So I wasn't that good of a writer that I could stand out. But what I did, I went to Humber from 1994 to 97. And at that time, I was one of the few people that actually knew how to use a Mac. And I was also one of the few people that actually knew anything about Quark Express. Who knows Quark Express here? Okay, who here is a certified Quark Express expert? Yeah. So I'm showing my age now too. 10,000 hours. It was like before Malcolm Gladwell knew that you had to be an expert to do that. The Cork Express was on top of it. So my first job out of school was actually I worked at the Hockey News. I was actually much better at being an art director and a designer. And this is the stuff that I kind of did. And I worked there for 5 years, and it was mostly a great experience. I worked on over 200 issues of the magazine, and I got to art direct photo shoots with some hockey players that I looked up to when I was growing up. And after a few years on that job, my job it actually morphed into I became a special issues designer. So whenever they're putting out some 50th anniversary of something, or whatever, I ended up also being a newsstand cover specialist. So I would design. It's called Preview Sports. It was this kind of yearly annual thing, and it would be for like fantasy leagues or pool leagues. They would make an edition, and then they would have 12 regional covers for it. And so I would do those 12 regional covers for NFL football, and then do 12 regional covers for college football, and then I would do that for college basketball, and then I would do it for basketball. And so, in 1 year, I think I designed about just 100 covers on my own that were just regional covers. And as nice as that was, pumping out an issue and doing these kind of covers became kind of mind-numbing, because I would come up with a template like in the top right corner there, and I would just take out Matt Sundin and I would put in Joe Sakic, and then I would put in someone else. So all these kind of regional things. So it was quite fun, but I needed another outlet. And at this time, when I was working professionally, I didn't have a college newspaper or a campus newspaper for me to do my comics in. So I began to publish my own comics. So some of you might know me from this time, or you might not. I drew a pretty wry and sardonic comic called Matt B, and it started in 1998, which is why there's an @ sign in the middle of it. I thought I was super cool. Matt, M with the @ sign is Matt, and there's so many Matts, so I was called Matt B when I was growing up. So that's how I came to Matt B, and everyone's like, "What's an M at B?" So you can't design you can't get a domain name with an @ sign in it. It was just a horrible idea for a name here. But anyways, I started drawing this comic in 1998. I put out 15 editions of it, and I actually did a book which I collected and called it Wide Collar Crimes, which is a much better name than Matt B. So in 2003, iWeekly picked me up and started publishing my comic in the back pages, besides all the prostitution ads, and that was great for my mom to pick up that paper each week. But what was kind of great out of this thing, one of the things that kind of came out that was really nice, and I wish I had a screen capture, is but that writing that you see there is my handwriting, but I actually made a font of my handwriting. If anyone knows, if you're drawing and you're drawing comics, my process was I would draw it all in pencil, and then I would ink it, and then I would do the lettering, and then it would take me a month of doing an issue, and at the end of it, my hand was crippled, right? It was a knot, and that's when I was doing the lettering, and so my lettering was becoming horrible. So I knew someone in the States that was a friend of mine that actually ended up making a font of my handwriting. What was even better is I could actually spell check my own handwriting. When you're writing, you just don't notice if you're making spelling mistakes, because you're not spelling, you're looking at letters. It's a much different thing. Anyways, so I did this comic for a while, and I stopped it in 2007, and it was a great run. But it gave me kind of I used my professional experience of working at the Hockey News to do this really kind of indie publishing zine. I learned how I photocopied late at night at the Hockey News all my editions of it. So I gave it away for free. So I wasn't actually stealing, I guess, at that point. But what was great, what was kind of, I want to bring this a little bit into the theme here of crossover. What I did was I didn't actually start giving these away or publishing them in, or putting them out in comic stores. I started putting them out in music stores. So Soundscapes was my headquarter on College Street. It opened right when I kind of moved into the neighborhood in 2000, I guess it was, or 2001. And I befriended Greg, the owner, and I started distributing my comic in a music store, not a comic store. And I started doing release parties for each one of my comics. And then I would get a friend who was in a band to come play my release party. So I would draw on music fans, and I would bring the handful of comic fans that I had, and we would kind of mesh. And what's great about it is if you might have heard of a band called Broken Social Scene, played one of my release parties. Reed Jameson, Justin Rutledge, Royal Wood. These people, they were just people I met at Soundscapes, essentially, hanging out there at listening stations, and they were nobodies at the time as well. And we got to collaborate on some of those things, and it's quite amazing when I go back and look at some of the posters who I actually had play my events for free, because right now I could not afford them. But the grind of working at the Hockey News wore me down, and I found myself having to look for making a living off of freelance work. Maybe I should be clear, they actually fired me. I'm not the most manageable person in the world. I'll freely admit this. They changed our dress code policy on us in the middle there. I worked for a sports magazine, and in the middle of the summer they said, you can't wear shorts anymore. And we're like, what's wrong with shorts? And they said, no, you gotta look more professional. And so what I went and did was I went and bought those beach jammer, whatever they're shorts that go down halfway down your shins, right, and up above your ankle. And so when they changed that, I kind of fought it with some of my colleagues, and they didn't really, the higher ups didn't really care about what I was talking about. I felt this was some sort of human rights claim that I was making, I think. And I threatened to unionize over this, and then they isolated me and kind of started going at me here. And then so what I started doing is I wore those pants. I call them pants, short pants, for 3 straight weeks, and no one really noticed. And then my boss is like, "Why are you wearing shorts?" And I'm like, "I'm not wearing shorts." And he goes, "Yeah, you're wearing shorts." And I'm like, "No, I'm wearing pants." And he says, "No, those are shorts." I said, "No, they're short pants." And he goes, "No, those are long shorts." And I literally got a written warning about this, right? And then I kind of kept doing it. And then one day I got called into the office and said, I don't think this is working out anymore. So luckily I knew someone in HR, and I got into when they fired me or let me go. It's A is for like disobedience, B is for something, and it goes I got all the way down to K, and it's like other, and that's what I got selected for. And what was great about that, I got into the self-employment program that Human Resources Canada, like EI, offers, and I got to spend a year collecting EI and starting my own business. And my own business was basically starting Spacing Magazine. And it was a graphic design company that I was going to work with arts and culture organizations. And I did a lot of that freelance work, but Spacing was at the heart of it. And so during that time, I started doing so I really started getting involved in some sort of advocacy work at the city. With my comic, the way I promote all my events was through postering. And then the city decided that they're going to ban posters, and it just seemed like such a ridiculous thing, because at the time they're trying to ban posters, which essentially there's a lot of crappy posters out there, but it's it's like walk my dog, or I'll walk your dog, come see my play, come see my band, and then they were putting ads on our garbage bins at the same time for like McDonald's and real estate, and we just thought this was really hypocritical. And after a period of time, we actually ended up convincing the city not to ban postering. Instead of 97%, it was only 3%. And then, of course, Facebook and Twitter happens, and there's no need for posters anymore. But nonetheless, we helped. This was our first issue, and we created Spacing because there was actually no publication in the city that we felt was dealing with public space issues. We had I and Now and the dailies of reporting on things, but they were reporting on news for the most part. There was no kind of big picture thinking. It wasn't relating things. Everything was in silos. If it was about transit, it was always about transit. But if you talk about transit, you need to talk about development and density and the walking environment and stuff that in urban design, all that stuff that kind of surrounds transit. But that wasn't what was happening. So that's why we kind of started spacing. And on top of that, there was also a lack of love for the city. And I think that was one of the things that we've done differently than a lot of other publications, certainly at that time, was that we wanted to show that we really like the city. And it seems really, people that don't live in Toronto think Torontonians just think Toronto's the bee's knees. We think we're the biggest and baddest and all that stuff. And of course we're not. Like we're so down on Toronto as Torontonians in many ways. But we wanted to show that there was actually really lots of good things about the city. And that's why we kind of released the magazine. And it was I realized now doing this talk, when I look back, there's a bit of a trajectory that my source of creativity has come from basically public life. It was my comic. If you do know my comic here, it was essentially me overhearing people's current conversations walking around the city or on transit and stuff like that. And I was running into like the odd person on the streets. And it was a real source of inspiration. And then I started spacing, and it's all about life in the public realm. And I feel like once I started spacing, I actually started to hit my stride as someone who was designing and being an artist and being creative with the city. And I feel like I began to use the city and everything that kind of offers as my inspiration. With spacing, it allowed me to kind of explore all the things that I kind of wanted to do. So I took some of the stuff that I learned publishing my comic, doing release parties. You can see we got some release parties here. Oh, look how happy Olivia Chow is there. She's not going to be in the coming days, unfortunately. I'd like her. I'm going to vote for her, but it's not. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, but I'm really happy Rob Fort's not going to be our mayor, so that's almost more important. So we would do these release parties, and we've done them for every issue, and it's a good source of revenue. Hardly any other magazine does things like this. Occasionally they do it, but for us it's a thing that we do. We've done things like gallery exhibits. We took I think we might have been the first taking photo bloggers. This is back in 2005. We took photo bloggers off the internet into the gallery. That rarely ever happened at that time, and we gave a whole bunch of amateur photographers a way to push themselves and start to make some money that they hadn't been able to make because they were giving away their images for free on the internet. We started doing unique events that made actually no sense. 35 years without the Spadina Expressway. Why 35 years? Because we realized it was 35 years. But we also knew that there were people that worked on saving the Spadina or stopping the Spadina Expressway that were getting up there in years, and they were going to die maybe soon. I know it sounds morbid, but it was really true. And we had a whole bunch of speakers, and then we couldn't do the 40th anniversary because 4 or 5 of those speakers had passed away. We held the event at the Spadina Museum, which is right beside Casa Loma, and see this rendering. This is what the Spadina Expressway would have looked like at Casa Loma. So you're kind of looking this way, not the off ramp, but the sunken thing is I believe is Davenport Avenue. So you're kind of looking northeast at Casa Loma. Or maybe no, you're looking actually northwest, and that's actually the highway that's coming out of the ground there, and that's Spadina going straight down. I just threw in another one here because this is looking north up Spadina. You can see Casa Loma in the background there. That's bluer in the foreground there. It would have been a sunken highway right outside of here. Who knows if this building or any of these nice, beautiful old warehouse buildings would still exist if they built the Spadina Expressway. So we did events like that just because we thought it was something that like a new generation of people that cared about cities didn't actually have any idea about. We've tried to do unique things, like I took this cargo bike, put a lid on it that folds out into a mobile store, so we can take our wares and go anywhere. We can take over our parking spot for half an hour and sell our stuff. We've done stupid things like take our readers out to like lawn bowling nights. We've turned a whole bunch of people into lawn bowling fanatics, and it's really quite fun. It really is. I had no idea, but we did this because lawn bowling clubs have an aging membership. Their people are dying off. This is maybe another theme here that I have in my talk, but they'll be closed if people don't go to them, and it's really cheap. You pay for it's like $5 a night to go play lawn bowling, so it's actually really quite fun. fun thing to do. And then we've done other things too with spacing. We're doing road trips now. We've taken people to Detroit and taken people to Pittsburgh on these urbanism road tours where we pack in 7 or 8 tours over 2 days. I see one person that's actually been on our tours. Anyone else here been on a tour? Okay, there's another one. Kyle, you were on one. Adil was, yeah. So you learn as much as you can about Detroit in 2 days so that you can go back and not feel afraid to go there and actually learn the fact that there's actually a good thing. They're not just dogs roaming neighborhoods, taking over houses, and there's actually some amazing stuff that's actually going on in Detroit. It's a very resilient city. There's a lot of creativity and entrepreneurial spirit there, and it's only 4 hours from Toronto. It's really worthwhile going down and not just looking at the decay and the ruin porn there, but there's actually some really good stuff that's going on. But the thing I think that set us apart as a magazine is we started to produce merchandise. Literally, I think right around now, does anyone know if Canzine has happened? Is Canzine happens around this time? It has? Yeah. For this year, we launched our TTC subway buttons at Canzine 10 years ago around this time. And that was just an idea we had. And DuPont Station is like my favorite subway station because there's hardly any sharp edges there. It's beautiful, it's beautifully retro. It's kind of ugly in some ways. So I was out with a couple of spacing editors, 10 years ago. We're out for a walk. We saw this sign. This is a telling story about the TTC and creativity. We saw a sign in a collector's booth, and it had a golf ball with the TTC logo on it, and they were selling those golf balls to employees. And we said to ourselves, we're like, that would be cool if they actually sold that to the public. And then someone said, what if they did golf balls of subway stations? And then if you look at a golf ball, it has all these dimples in it. And we're like, yeah, because some golf balls are bright orange so you can see them in the grass. And we're like, imagine if they did like a DuPont station golf ball, that'd be great. And then it clicked on us that obviously golf only appeals to a small percentage, a certain demographic of people. And we're like, well, we could do buttons, and so, they cost very little. And so we started doing these buttons. I came up with this idea, and then I gave a set to David Miller. It was about a year into his term, and he started wearing those subway buttons. He would go around to different parts of the city, and he'd wear he'd represent the local subway station. And then the media started asking about it, and then they came to us. And then in a month, we sold 30,000 of these buttons because we had all this media attention right around Christmas. It was perfect time for us. And then stores like Swipe picked us up and started selling them, and we got them into a handful of stores. But I should back up. I kind of actually ruined a little bit of my story there. But I had this idea before we actually started selling them. I went to the TTC and I said, hey, I got this idea. I got a merchandise idea that I think that you guys would be really into. And their response was, well, you can't actually pitch it to us. And I'm like, why is that? Because they said I wasn't a vendor. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I become a vendor? So they wanted me to register, and they said, what you need to do is you need to start bidding on contracts that we put out. And I'm like, for what? I don't want to do any of those things. And they're like, it said, well, we can't have you produce merchandise for us if we don't issue an RFP for it. And I'm like, you don't even know what my idea is. It was this Kafka-esque kind of conversation. We just kind of went in a circle. And then so what I did was I had a friend who was a media lawyer, and I got her to look up about copyright, and we found out that none of the subway station designs are copyrighted other than the original work of artists in the station. So if you're in DuPont Station, those flower mosaics are intellectual property of the artist, but the wall and the font, for that matter, aren't. So I just started doing them myself, and then we got all this attention, and then we heard through my friends at City Hall that the TTC had lawyers thinking about this, looking at this, and then David Miller said, "It's like you're gonna squash the people's love of their subway stations? Like, why would you even consider doing that?" And so luckily nothing ever happened. And we often said that if we made a button of the TTC logo and started selling it, no one would buy it. But because people have personal affiliations, they have some sort of love, some sort of connection to subway stations, that's why they picked them. So we did a count the other day. We have now sold 500,000 of these buttons in 10 years. If you stack them up on top of each other, that's taller than the CN Tower. Our merchandise rep tells that story all the time, and no one laughs, so I'm very happy that you guys laugh. gotta say it's my delivery that did it. So we've been doing these, and now we do them for Montreal as well. We've come up with other things here. We have a thing called Metro Magnets, where it's like magnetic poetry, but it's with pieces of a subway line, so you can make your own crazy subway lines on your fridge and stuff like that. So we do also do them for Edmonton as well. Montreal. Get this, we just started doing like we did in Toronto, and Montreal emailed, or we got a letter from the STM in Montreal, and they said, they are beautiful. Keep doing them. We just want you to put our website on the edge. So the stm.ca is on the edge, on the top edge of these. That's what we got. So that's a little bit of difference between a TTC and STM in Montreal in terms of appreciating some sort of creativity and design. And then the next thing happened. So in 2010, we had the unfortunate experience of electing Rob Ford, and then we had the just as bad experience of having Don Cherry come to City Hall and put the chain of mayor over top of his head, and then give some sort of speech where he called people who didn't agree with him left-wing pinkos and bike-riding pinkos. And I wasn't at City Hall, I was at our office. We had just moved. I was listening to this over the net, and as soon as he said left-wing pinkos, everyone in our office said, buttons! I'm serious. In an hour, in 1 hour, we had a design up on our store, and they were selling. In 4 hours, we had them produced, because Crucial Buttons, or Crucial Pins, is just here on Richmond, just above the Mama's Pizza. They produced a whole bunch of them. We dropped them into Swipe. We dropped them into a handful of other stores, and we were selling them in 4 hours after the fact. We sold 30,000 of these in 1 month, and that was a wonderful experience, because I think we had a bit of a cash flow issue at the time. So that was great, and I still see people wearing these, and we still have people buying them. We had every province in Canada was represented with a purchase during that time period, and we had 22 different states represented for these left-wing pinkos and bike-riding pinkos. So we hit the nail on the head there. We've been doing merchandise for a long period of time, and we're different than other magazines. The general model for a magazine is you make money off of ads, you make money off of subscriptions, and then maybe you make money off of newsstand sales. You usually break even on newsstand sales. We added 2 other things, which is events. We do lots of events each year, or release parties, but other things. And then we do merchandise, and merchandise actually makes up about on any given year 15 to 20% of our revenue for our magazine, which is, when I tell other magazine publishers this, their jaws drop, because they don't understand how that works. At one point, our buttons made more than our advertising revenue. I would say that in 2005 and 6 and 7, I would say that maybe 40% of our revenue was coming from our button sales or merchandise sales. But we've been doing this for a while now. We've been obviously, we go to word on the street, we have mail order, and so we decided that it was time to actually open a retail store. So with the help of the fine folks here at 401 Richmond, we're opening a retail store downstairs in the basement. In the northeast corner, you'll be able to access us right off of Richmond Street in the northeast corner of the building, and then the fine people at Swipe that are here will be down there as well. And we'll have kind of that whole part of that building is being reinvigorated right now, and we're very fortunate to be at the forefront of that. And the reason I started this is if you travel to other cities, if you've gone to New York or London or Berlin, there's these stores that are called that are dedicated to the city. They're celebrating the city, and they're not just selling tchotchke stuff. They're selling actually well-designed stuff. It's more than an "I Love New York" T-shirt. It's much more creative than that. In Detroit, where it has the highest murder rate in the U.S., or one of the highest at least, there are at least four stores that are dedicated to like loving Detroit, right? They have soap with like a map of Detroit in it, like there's a lot of love for the city down there, but Toronto has none of this. So we decided, we have a little bits. We have like Scout out on Roncesvalles. There's a Drake General Store, which is a little Canadiana in Ontario, but there's nothing really a Toronto store. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to sell, we will be selling highly designed stuff. Our motto basically is no moose, no beavers, no CN Tower. We'll do a little CN Tower just as long as it's creative. But we'll also be I don't want to say the first magazine, we'll be the only Canadian-owned magazine that's not include Monocle and Canadian-owned magazines, to have a retail store. Tyler Brûlé is Canadian, but really... oh man, this is being filmed too, isn't it, right? I'm sorry, Tyler. So we're hoping to open at the in the middle of November, the week of November 10th. We'll have some details about this, but there is one other Canadian magazine out in St. John's, Newfoundland, called Down Home, who has a store, but they're very much that moose and beaver, and for them icebergs T-shirts, right? It's very much that fact, and they seem to be a magazine about. That's kind of put on by the tourism board there. So I feel like I can claim that we're the only Canadian magazine with a true retail store. We want to be able to, I feel like after 10 years, we've been, apologies to my friends at the Center for Social Innovation where we had an office, we've been locked behind 3 glass security doors, and we're a magazine about the public realm and public spaces of the city. So I feel like we're actually getting to the point now where we're actually living our mandate, which is to be a magazine about the public of the city. So if you don't like an article, you can come yell at me because I'll be right there. You can walk into the store and see me because our office is actually also in the store. So behind the counter, our magazine production will be happening there. So you can come pitch us an idea as well too, and not yell at me. That'd be more ideal. Yeah, we'll be open in a couple of weeks, and we'll have our party about it. So. I think I'm gonna wrap up here so that there's a question and answer period, isn't there? Yeah. So instead of me babbling on about how great our store is going to be, you can ask me questions and I can tell you how great our store is going to be. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this.